I'm trying to think of, the reason I keep asking about like an example, I'm trying to figure out, because we can have opinions about facts. So for example, does God exist? Well, he either does or he doesn't. And oftentimes we kind of fall back and say, well, it's your opinion. Well, no, I can't bring the universe into existence by my opinion. I can have an opinion about the universe that already exists, but I can't bring God into existence and out of existence based off of my opinion. I may have a view that either he exists or he doesn't, but I could be wrong about that. But we use that language, like, oh, it's just your opinion. I don't know, which is better, pepperoni pizza or sausage pizza? If you have to pick one, or cheese pizza, if you have to pick just one, that would be an opinion also. But it isn't an opinion about facts. It's an opinion about tastes or opinions about experiences. These are the kinds of things that is difficult for us to debate about. Even if we're talking about, like, I don't know, who's the best football team? And you might say, well, whoever wins the Super Bowl is the best football team. But is it possible that the team that won the Super Bowl just had a great day and the other team had a bad day, but that other than that, like if they met, 10 days, if they had 10 games in a year, that the other team would have won 9 of them? I don't know. Depends on how you view it. It's kind of like if we're talking about who's the best quarterback. I don't know, it really depends on how you measure it. Do you measure it based off of the best throwing percentage? Do you measure it off of the most yards? Or do you measure it off of some of those intangible things? Like, the quality of a quarterback's leadership, which it's hard to, you can't put that on paper. And so it depends on what we mean by that. So it's like tastes and experiences, if that makes sense. And then we have these other facts, like I said, these other opinions that are kind of about facts. Like, for example, is the universe infinite? We can have an opinion about it, but our opinion is just an interpretation of some data. Now, some people have more data, and of course, some people have less data. Like if you asked a 10-year-old, is the universe infinite? They would have an opinion about it, perhaps. But are they right or are they wrong? Well, they got a 50-50 chance, right? If they just said, yes, it's infinite. If they said, no, it's not infinite. But they can't possibly know because they're not an expert in a field. Now, also, we can run into problems when we over-expertise certain fields. Like, for example, if any of you remember that, I think it was last year, there was someone who was in front of the Senate. I'm sorry, actually in front of the Senate. And she was being confirmed for the Supreme Court. And she was asked, what is it? She began her opening statements essentially saying, it's important for us to have the perspective of women on the Supreme Court and the perspective of people of color on the Supreme Court. She was a black woman. A senator asked her during the confirmation hearings, what is a woman? And she said, I'm not a biologist, I can't answer that question. Well, you have to be a biologist to know what a woman is. After all, you are somebody who just a day earlier said, it's important for me to be here because I am this thing, a woman, and therefore, as being a woman, the perspective of this thing matters. Well, what is that thing? I don't know, I'm not a biologist, I can possibly tell you. Now, that person is just lying, of course. They're just afraid to answer a question. They're just lying. And say what you will about the kinds of things, when we hear stuff like that, we still say, even though we know you're a liar, you go ahead and assent. But does the person have to be a biologist to know what that thing is? Do you have to be an expert in the field? Being an expert can help you in certain fields. Like, I'd rather listen to the opinion of an expert architect when building a house, rather than listen to that 10-year-old we were talking about earlier. Because the architect will know, has some expertise in it. But expertise can only, of course, take you so far. There's a practical application of things as well. So whether or not, like for example, we might say whether or not abortion is a good thing or a bad thing, it's going to depend a lot on what do we mean by human life. Because earlier you said baby, and so the question is, well, is it a baby? Well, I didn't mean that. Well, then why do we say it? And if somebody else might say a fetus, and of course you can ask the person what kind of a fetus. Well, it's a human fetus, so it is a human. Well, no, but so oftentimes our language, we kind of, and I don't think you're wrong at all, that we kind of oftentimes begin with our conclusion in place. This is what I believe. and then we reason backwards to figure out ways that we can defend our belief, rather than look at the evidence all along the way and then say, the evidence leads me to this belief. And actually our research shows us that this first one is how most people do their moral reasoning. They figure out what they believe, and then they work backwards. Now, that isn't necessarily always a terrible thing, but you should be aware of it, because it tells us how we think, of course, but it also tells us how so many other people in the world think. And so we have this tendency to just kind of say, anybody who disagrees with me, oh my God, they're so stupid. Why would they believe that? The first thing you should do actually is begin with that question. Why would people believe this? And like, for example, with regards to abortion, why is it that people are in favor of abortion? Because they want to run around and murder children all day, right? Do you think that people really sit there and they're like, how can we murder children today? No. No. In fact, if you ask them, are you murdering children? In most cases, people are going to say, no. I don't think it is a child. There is a philosopher at Princeton, Peter Singer, interesting guy, but he argues, yeah, a fetus is an innocent human being, but we have every right to murder it. He lays out another argument for it. But by and large, people who are in favor of abortion don't think it's a human being. So when you say things like you're wicked, you're evil, you're despicable, if they don't think it's a human being, then that language just doesn't make any sense to them. If people are against abortion, do you really think that they sit there and they're like, you know, how can we control women's bodies today? Patriarchy. Do you really think that's what they're thinking? Or do you understand that they are looking at it like it's a human being? And if that's the case, and you understand that, therefore, if it's true that we're murdering a whole bunch of babies every year, I mean, Hitler's got nothing on us, man. If it's true that it's an innocent human being. I mean, we kill more in a couple of years than Hitler killed in the whole Holocaust, but we do it over and over and over again. So if you believe that, the lengths to which people go to stop those sorts of things makes sense. But that's one of the reasons that that's such a hard case. But the reasoning behind it is really not so hard. It's pretty straightforward. We can begin with a syllogism. It's never okay to kill an innocent human being. And if we agree with that, then we can move on to the next one. A fetus is an innocent human being. Therefore, it's never okay to kill a fetus. But it's that second premise that all of our argumentation comes down to. Is a fetus an innocent human being? If so, then there's no reason that's good enough for killing it. If it's not, then no justification for killing it is necessary. You could eat it for lunch for any way you should care. But once we zero in on that, now we can start to figure out what is it to be a human being. And this is where oftentimes people go, oh my God, it's too much thinking. Well, maybe it's too much thinking to have an opinion. And maybe we should back off of those kinds of opinions and just kind of recognize, I don't have an opinion about this. And there's nothing wrong with not having an opinion about things. In fact, it's probably helpful to not have an opinion about things, because you're going to find that oftentimes the people who are the loudest, I mean, they don't really know what they're talking about. I don't know if any of you guys have seen those videos on YouTube where people will go out and interview protesters, and they'll ask them what they're protesting about. And granted, those interviews probably cherry-picked. I get that, but it's quite amazing how many people will be out in the streets protesting about things or showing up at places to protest about things, and they have no idea about the issue. They just show up. And then it looks like the movement is actually bigger than it is. But the problem with thinking this way is that we're therefore not motivated by principles and values. Because if we believe these kinds of things, that abortion is right or wrong, God exists or doesn't. And that's why I was trying to press you on coming up with more examples. What kind of pizza is the best, perhaps? Then we would live very differently if we actually believed these things. I mean, we would live dramatically differently. We look at people in the world who are particularly religious, and we think, good example. I think it was, I remember it was in this class. We're talking about like Jehovah's Witnesses and showing up at your house in the morning, like Sunday morning, knocking on your door, waking you up. And I talk to people, and they're like, they kind of like relish in the idea that they make fun of them or they give them a hard time. It's like, why? Oh, because they're bugging me. They shouldn't shove it down your throat. Well, they're not. They're showing up to your house and they're giving you an opportunity to talk about it. Well, they shouldn't do that. Well, that's an opinion, right? But why? Why are they doing it? What's their opinion about it? What do they think? Oh, I don't care. No, but But that's the problem, is that we don't care and we react viscerally. I'm not saying we should be happy about it, but why are they showing up at your house and waking you up? Because they believe that you're going to hell. That's why. And they believe that hell is an eternal thing. If they really believe that, then, I mean, they should probably say something. No, but they shouldn't. That's like if we go to the mountains and you see somebody who's got their eyes blindfolded and they're walking and they're about to walk off of a cliff and die. And would you really say, I shouldn't shove my opinion down their throat. I don't know if they're going to float or not. I don't know if they're actually going to go over the cliff. I don't want to get involved. Of course not. Of course you would hopefully say something to them like, hey, stop what you're doing. You run over there, try to take the blindfold off of them. You could show them what you were just saving them from. And hopefully they would turn away from the cliff. This is why they show up at your house on Sunday mornings. They think that you're going to hell. And they think that they have some information that will stop you from doing that. They're trying to stop you from walking off of an eternal cliff. Are they right or wrong? Again, that goes back to facts about opinions versus facts about experiences. All I'm saying is understand why they're doing it. You would probably feel very differently towards them. In fact, it would probably be difficult to feel anything except for gratitude towards them. And by the way, if you're an atheist and you think that they're completely wrong, that they're wasting their lives, and that they're actually harming humanity with this is a great opportunity to tell them that and to share your view with them, because they showed up at your house. And maybe you tell them the same thing because you're worried about them, that they're wasting their lives and what they could possibly be contributing to humanity if they would just get rid of all of this religion nonsense. So it all begins, though, with this idea of understanding why people believe the things that they believe, because everything we do for a reason. You know, if you think about laws, well, that's a stupid law. Why? Why is it so stupid? It might not be relevant in 2024. Maybe it's a law that's hundreds of years old, but there's a really good reason for it. And before we dismiss things, we should find out the reasons that they exist. Because a lot of times our belief systems, just like our societies, they're like Jenga, you know, that puzzle thing where you take out one piece and you hope the whole thing doesn't collapse. A lot of times our value systems are like that. A lot of times our like, for example, let's say that you have a belief that there is no God. Well, if you believe there's no God, you can believe in abortion whether you believe it's a human being or not. You might say, yeah, I believe it's a human being, but you know, we got too many of us, so I'm okay with killing some of them. Even the babies, oh, especially them, they grow up to be big babies, so we should definitely get rid of them. But it all stems from this initial belief. And a lot of our belief systems are like that. I guess the question is, what is our primary belief system? What's your fundamental core ideal? If you say something like, I believe that kindness is the core ideal, okay, but you better have a really strong idea of what kindness is, because kindness might not be always doing the thing that you think is nice. Sometimes you need to be cruel to be kind. And so or is your primary value, you know, to be a good person? Great. Now, of course, you have to figure out what it is to be a good person. That doesn't mean that you wait to live until you figure it out. It means it does mean, though, that you really pour yourself into figuring these things out. Part of the problem is half of the world is composed of people who have something to say, but they can't. And there are lots of reasons people can't say things. Maybe they're not allowed to. During nutrition break, somebody was in here, one of my students was in here, and she was asking me, do you know why I like your class so much? I said, I don't. And she said, because we can say whatever the hell we want to say, and there's no judgment. Yeah. So by the way, just from that, you can figure out something about me. Again, especially for those of you who are new, just because I say something in here, don't assume it's my opinion. If I do my job well, you won't know what I actually believe about anything. Everything I'm telling you right now is what Robert Frost would say. It's not what Scanlon believes. If you want to know what I think, ask me before class, ask me after class. You see me in the hallways, you can ask me, no problem. But my job to be up here is not to indoctrinate you. It's to tell you, it's to expose you to ideas. But there's one thing I couldn't possibly hide, which is the fact that clearly I believe in free speech, because we couldn't possibly be doing this exercise unless I believed in free speech. And the important aspect of free speech is that we need to be free to say anything. And then people will look at me side-eyed. Anything? Anything. Why? Because that's how you discover which ideas are good and which ideas are bad. If you never express an idea and you kind of keep it to yourself, it never gets challenged. And then that idea just kind of goes inside of you, and then it blooms up, and you can live with some really jacked up, screwed up ideas. You know, well, what about if something is racist? Should we be able to say it? Yeah, of course, because that's how we discover the stupidity of it, because we're actually able to question it. If you keep it to yourself, what are you going to do? You're probably going to find other people online who have the exact same view. And then what are they going to do? They're going to foster it, and it's going to grow, and it's never going to be challenged. And then you're going to be, chin deep in an opinion in your life, and you're only going to hold it because it was never challenged. So this is why free speech is so important. This is why I cringe when I hear people try to shut down other people from talking. It's like you believe that you're the judge of all ideas, and you're the judge of all humanity, that you get to decide what's worth saying and what's not worth saying. And by the way, those people typically do believe that. But again, you ask them what's their value system, to unpack it like this, they probably won't be able to. Very rarely will they be able to. So maybe they can't, maybe they have something to say and they can't, or maybe they, in other words, we're not allowed to. But it's also possible that we just haven't developed the ability to. It's like when I ask, what's the purpose of this whole class? Why are we here? Why are we even doing this whole English thing? That's a huge part of it, to be able to experience ideas, of course, but also to develop the capacity for explaining your ideas. Because unless you have experience explaining your ideas, you're probably not going to be comfortable sharing them. And if you share an idea and it never goes challenged, it's going to get challenged someday. Maybe not in this classroom, but maybe in 11th grade, maybe in 12th grade, or God forbid, out in the world. And after hearing the same opinions and being kind of getting away with never being challenged for 12 years of your life, and all of a sudden showing up and being challenged out in the real world, this is where you hear people say really stupid things like words are violence. You know? People who say things like words are violence have clearly never been punched in the face. If you've been punched in the face, you will understand that it is probably better to be called a name rather than get punched in the face. You've never been stabbed before. You have a choice of being called a racial epithet or getting stabbed. I would rather be called a cracker than get stabbed. And both have happened to me. And I can tell you from experience, I'd rather just be called a name. But why would we say something like words are violence? Because it never goes challenged. We never experience anything else. So it's important to be able to have the freedom to say something. To also have the skill set to be able to say it, to get practice with saying things so that you're confident in what you say and how you say it. And then, of course, the other half have nothing to say and they keep on saying it. We all know that. But I'll leave that one. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Monday.